All right, can we keep the momentum going now for our second panel discussion? Are we ready for that? This time I want a loud yes from everyone. Can I get that? It just rained on me from somewhere. Okay, so we'll start with this. All right, so for our next panel discussion, we have the topic, the future of workforce management, strategies for a dynamic environment, with a remarkable panel that includes Mr. MVN Rao, Head of Corporate Learning and Development, CLO for Larsen and Toubro Limited. Can we have you on stage, sir? And like before, if you can take the seats under your images, that would be great. Next, we have Mr. Satej Mehta, Head HR Corporate, TATM CNB for Wockhardt. Can we have the applause going as they take the stage? We also have with us Mr. Sanjeeb Lahiri, Chief Human Resources Officer for GRP Limited. Next, we have Mr. Bharat Agrawal, Finance Director, South Asia for Diversey. We also have with us Mr. Nabarun Sengupta, Chief Technology Officer for L&T-SuFin. And our final panelist is Mr. Pratik Vaidya, Chief Vision Officer and Managing Director for Karma Management Global Consulting Solutions Private Limited. And now to introduce our moderator for this session, can we have a round of applause for Ms. Naina Acharya, Associate Director of Learning and Economic Insights Group at Dun & Bradstreet, India. Over to you, Ms. Acharya.
Thank you, Mustaf. As always, it's very nice to see a full house, and it's more exciting to see a full panel. So thank you so much for taking time out from your schedule. And I must just give a little bit of context, because looking at the, we were having an ice-breaking session, and in the discussions, what we realize is that strategies for a dynamic environment is too huge a discussion, and it can probably speak for the entire day. So we need to skim it a little bit just to make sure that we focus on the couple of points which are quite critical in today's dynamic scenario. And also, being in a VUCA world has been talked about a lot, but I think what's the hot topic right now is not talking about how the environment has evolved historically, but we have a pre-COVID and a post-COVID scenario. So what I would like to also share is that we had conducted a survey to understand the sentiments of people, especially the employees, to get some insights into curating the content for this particular discussion. So what we thought is, hey, we have a full house today. Why don't we just have a small poll and understand your needs? So we will compare this with the poll that we ran a couple of days earlier and see whether the sentiment is the same. On the screen, as you can see, we have a QR code as well as, we have a code here. So you can log into www.menti.com, and the number that you can see there is 866-81520. So if you could quickly just go onto your mobiles and log into www.menti.com and put about the numbers there, 866-81520. So there's a question that will be put up on the screen out there. And the question is, how well do you think your current employer adapts to employees' needs or requirements? We'll just spend about 15 seconds. Wow. We'll just wait for a couple of seconds more. I can see over 80 to 100 people out here, and we need more numbers. So if all of you could be kind enough and just join us on this poll. Yes, we can see the numbers increasing. All right. Our panelists are probably thinking, why aren't we a part of this? All right. So in the interest of time, since you, probably some of you may not be able to log into Menti because of the connectivity issues, can we have the poll results from the earlier survey that Dun & Bradstreet had conducted? Okay. Well, as you can see, we saw that about 19 people agreed that, they're moderately happy with the benefits that the company has given them, or, the needs that they have in mind. And here is the result that we conducted, where we reached out to over 300 to 400 people. And they said yes, 52% said that, yeah, we are moderately happy with what is being given to us. So let us take this as a yardstick in terms of they are moderately happy, if not very happy. And we'll start with the question. So the first question is for Mr. Rao. And the question is, the concept of workforce management over the years. If we look at it, what are the key drivers that are basically driving the need or the modern business landscape?
Thank you. Thanks to be here. See, workforce management traditionally, even now or ever before, it has always been the same. What is the purpose of workforce management is you get the right people at the right time and create an environment where they can give off their best. That has been the endeavor of all the workforce managers all through the decades. But what has really changed is not the outcomes, but the form and the delivery, how it is going to be done, has substantially changed over the years and significantly changed in the last few years. And what are the dimensions against the change or the driving this particular change? I look at it from these perspectives of, the first is the workplace itself. Taking a look at our own organization, Larsen and Toubro Limited is a large conglomerate operating in manufacturing, projects, construction, services of all kinds. And you realize workplace hitherto has been where you go to work and you see and you manage what you see, fundamentally.
Correct.
And right now what we are saying is that a workplace is where you can get work done from anywhere, any place, any time. So the fundamental shift has taken place with respect to the workplace. And this has got a lot of ramifications on the workforce management. The second one is the workforce and talent itself. Yesteryears we used to have long years of tenures in organizations, permanent workforce and a little bit of temporary or a contract workforce. So you find now a very diverse, multi-generational talent with different kind of aspirations, part-time, gig, expectations are humongous and different. So suddenly what the workforce management, the dimensions associated with it are become very, very significantly different. The third one is technology. Technology is, I'm sure the kind of pace with which technology is changing, we are only running behind it and we are not able to keep pace with it. And the expectations of how to use the technology to bring in that kind of a workforce management which has coined the kind of delivery it produces which is relevant for the organization is also changing. And interestingly, when you look at the verticals and industry specifics, each one has gone their own dynamics.
True.
You go to a manufacturing unit, you will come back and say that nothing has changed. Everybody has come back to work and everything is going on as per the same thing. You go to a construction, I think it will be saying that people are working in the sites and everything is going on as always. You go to any of our service industries, I think significantly has changed. You go talk to my HR colleagues over there, they will tell you, oh, we are finding it difficult to get back people to 2 days a week and they are not wanting to come back, and they need flexible work arrangements and so on and so forth. So the dimensions relating to each one of these things, the workplace, the workforce, the talent, the aspirations, the technology, and the vertical or the industry dynamics have got a very significant ramifications on the way workforce management is being done. And most of these problems are pretty adaptive in nature. They are not straightforward. They have got multidimensional, multi-strategic forces are playing at play with this. So I think you need to look at it from very, very different dimensions, and I'm sure what we will discuss in the next 30 minutes is going to be look at various dimensions that are applicable, and using these levers, how you can actually create a better workplace. I think that's the way I look at it.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. And what I also understand in all the elements that you mentioned, all are moving parts.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
it's just about maintaining the right balance. And again, even Pallavi had mentioned that to get people into an office to have one team meeting has become such a big challenge. So when people have started moving from flexi to traditional kind of environment, especially post-COVID, 2021 experienced the great resignation kind of era. And then it became very imperative for companies because they started reassessing and trying to understand how do we create the best of both worlds. And I think that is one of the key indicators. And that is what I would like to ask you, Mr. Sengupta, that the pandemic accelerated the adoption of remote work. And, what were the best practices for effectively managing these remote teams, ensuring productivity as well as collaboration?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I will talk about our experience with L&T-SuFin. And as some of you might know, it's a business-to-business platform that we have built pretty much ground up during the pandemic time period, right? So it is one of those things where it's a good kind of a case study almost, right? Where how it is that we adopted to this sudden transition to remote work, basically, right? And there's a bunch of takeaways that we can discuss about in terms of the things that we have, learned from that experience, right? So if I step back to, let's say, the beginning of 2020, right? That's when we started the development of the platform itself, right? And at the time, nothing was, kind of fixed, right? There was a whole bunch of things that was unknown. There was huge amounts of uncertainty about what the platform should be and how it is that the vision of the platform should be realized. Now, sometime like March, I think, is when things started, becoming bad from a, pandemic perspective, right? Now, one of the basic things that we had done, right, was about how it is, we had to figure out how it is that we have to organize ourselves to be able to deliver productivity in spite of the, disruptions that we were seeing. So one of the basic tenets was about being able to develop relatively small autonomous teams that could work on specific aspects of the platform, right? Now, of course, if we look at it from a 10,000 feet view, that's like a kind of a no-brainer, right? You have to have autonomous teams, right? But then autonomous teams have to know what it is that you need to do, and at the same time collaborate and put together this big picture view of the platform itself, right? So to that effect, right, I mean, I do admit that there was a bit of, what should I say, stress on the senior management, the senior people in the team, to be able to define what it is that the overall vision and structure of the platform should look like, right? And the next part of the challenge is how it is that you make that kind of that vision part of the larger, culture or the tribal knowledge of the whole team. Because it's not as if you can sit across a conference room and talk to people on a day-to-day basis, but how it is that you manage to do, solve that problem, right? The other kind of a problem was more about technology. And when I say technology, things like collaboration tools is like a given, right? But the other part of the equation is, and I'm talking about a software-intensive kind of a system, right? So if you're building a software-intensive kind of a system, you should be able to work without, the need for connectivity, right? So it is almost as if these autonomous teams on their own devices and on their own, laptops, they should be able to execute and be able to develop, build upon the whole platform, right? So, and that was one of the early decisions that we took in the, in 2020, in the early part, right? How it is that we solve this engineering challenge of being able to, have this our platform is pretty large, and as time went by, it became larger and larger, right? How it is that you can essentially run it autonomously, locally, within a given device. And that, I think, was, on hindsight, one of the, one of the better things that we did, right? Which enabled people to work, be productive, in spite of the fact that, there was all this, disruptions in terms of, connectivity, and all those other challenges that we face. Now, the other part of the thing is, of course, a slightly softer aspect, which is about this whole business of being, of a culture that is based on trust, right? So, empathy and trust, right, is one of the basic things, right? So there are pod teams. We call them pod teams, right? Those little teams, those little autonomous teams that we were talking about. Now, each of those pod teams are, develop or deliver output at a pace they are comfortable with, right? So, that autonomy is given to them. So there is ups and downs. Over a period of time, there may be some pods might be more productive, others might be less so, right? But I think one of the lessons learned is, we need to be steadfast in our, support and commitment, right, to this culture of autonomy and trust that we, give to those little pod teams.
Absolutely, Mr. Sengupta. And what happens is that it also depends on the nature of the industry that we are functioning.
Absolutely right.
Because,
yes.
Irrespective of the strategies that we create, one size fits all doesn't work. So there is no right or wrong about it. I think that is when we can step to our new, the next question, and that's for you, Mr. Bharat, where we spoke about it as well during our ice-breaking session, where as businesses embrace your hybrid work models, there is a challenge in balancing the on-site and remote work. I mean, have you experienced, in your company or, through the case studies that you've been reading, that how can organizations create an inclusive environment for all the employees in this scenario, sir?
Yep. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been part of an organization where much before COVID, since 2011 to 2018, work from home was given. So I'm talking about British Petroleum, where we used to have work from home or remote working as a norm much before the pandemic impacted us. So taking cue from there and talking about what we did in Diversey, I think, pandemic and post-pandemic, the uncertainties that we're facing in the world around has made us to believe that we really, remote working has to be part of our lives. It can't just go away with COVID going away. And with that, I think some of the things that worked well with us is understanding what works well in the remote setup. We having kind of defined the expectations very clearly with our people who choose to say go for hybrid or work remote. Then to come to a place where we have accountability kind of a measurement rather than we really focusing on activities. So that's something that works well. So we have defined the expectations, we know the accountability that a person has to deliver, and then we give right tools and flexibility to the people to deliver what they're expected to do. Rather than probably, being too micromanaged here, because when you are in-person environment, when you are in a physical environment at one place, some of the time the things can be sensed even without you saying something, right? In the remote setup, things become too difficult at a time where you're not able to really see, even on the video, what's going on with the person. So those kind of things worked well. Having over-communication at time worked well with us. Then probably respecting, because I've, in my earlier organization, almost in the COVID times, I worked a place where I was responsible for operations starting from Africa till ENZ. So you have different cultural people working with you.
Right.
How do you understand the nuances, the cultural the points over there, respect those things, give the space to the person in the work environment? Those things really helped. And finally, engagement in the real sense did work well. Some of the time, due to Gallup or a Pulse survey coming in, we try to do things which is kind of called to promote engagement. But going that real spirit of engagement where you connect well with your person and he feels happy and connected with the manager. Those are the secrets I think worked well with us in the COVID times.
Well, sir, these days businesses have become global, if I may use that term, because we just realized during the COVID era, and I go back to COVID era because that was a lot of learnings for us as leaders. a lot of learnings for us as employees, and a lot of learning for us as humans, that certain aspects like empathy, which we thought was a given, actually it's not a given. And in the technology environment that we were in, where we were only using gadgets to communicate, empathy, we saw a new face of empathy, not a phase, a new face of empathy, which probably even we did not know. And that again gives rise to the fact that, there are a lot of incidences where moonlighting was talked about in length, and people were so happy having a source of extra income that they loved the flexi working. And as I said, coming back to the great resignation that happened, people said, hey, I know now that I have cracked the code to make an additional buck by sitting at home and working. I don't need to be an employee of a company. Well, then in that case, that gave rise to the gig economy. And this is my question again to Pratik. Actually, Bharat, you also had a view on this, but I would want Pratik to kind of share his view on this. That with the gig economy on rise and more workers seeking flexible arrangements, how can organizations integrate gig workers seamlessly into the workforce management strategies? Do you have some examples that you can share with us, Pratik?
Yeah, okay. First of all, how many HRs are there in this room? Can you just raise hands? We should actually give a big round of applause to HR when they manage the overall workforce during pandemics. Big round of applause to all HR and fraternity here. Now, you spoke about, we are all talking about pandemic and before pandemic and after pandemic. So the world is divided into two phases. One is BC era, which is not before Christ, but before COVID era, and AC era, which is after COVID. And the dynamics have completely changed. So the gig economy was always there in other countries like US, UK, and North America and all, and very, very few gig economy we saw coming in India. And in this pandemic itself, actually, gig economy was given a boost, where you see Zepto, you see Zomato, Swiggy, Uber, all they are part of gig economy, where the people are not aligned with one organization. They can work with many, and they can work in their own way. One of the oldest gig economy, I would say in India, is LIC agent. He's free to choose his own times and all. So in India, it is still developing, the gig economy, and the gig era is still developing. The laws and compliances to the gig economy is not yet done. There is one, law which is, a bill has been introduced in Rajasthan on gig workers. So those are just a bill which is introduced, and so-called labor codes, which is supposed to be coming in force in 2020, especially Social Security Code. It has a mention of gig workers. It has a mention of platform workers, what benefits and what compliance is to be given and all. So India is still, developing or underdeveloped mindset when it comes to gig economy. We still in that mindset, our traditional era of 9 se 5 aao, kaam karo in the office. So though the COVID has taught us to, ensure that we have flexible or virtual workplace, but still we are developing on that gig thing. And I'm sure, Bharat, you want to add here this.
Thanks, Naina, and thanks. Quite a relevant question in today's time. And yesterday I was having a very, very good discussion on this subject in my company as well. So gig, as he said, right, it's not a new word. We probably hearing it very often, very loudly now. But it goes back to probably hundreds of years back, where in Western world, the jazz musicians, when they used to do concert, they used to call it as gigging workers. So that's how the gig word comes in. So
Interesting.
Not something that really come now after COVID. But we're talking more about it because the businesses are changing, models are changing, the 9 to 5 of work is changing. Work is not the same that used to be there. Place is not the same. Sitting in India, you're working for the entire globe, right? So things are changing quite rapidly, and hence you don't really need to have a typical FTE to really do the job. You need to have gig workers who comes in the form of a freelancer, retainers, professionals, part-time employees, contractors, and work along with you. But one very, very tough question that I have for most of my people sitting here, and yesterday the same discussion that I was having in my company as well. we are so hardwired in our minds in terms of our policies, which are only focused in terms of our people or employees, right? We still don't have place in our policies for the gig workers, right? Whether you talk about the annual conference that you're going to do a month later, you talk about, the maternity benefits, you talk about any other benefits, right? Appraisal cycles. We hardly talk about gig workers to be part of such systems. So when the times are changing, when we have, say, almost 30% of US workforce today is in some shape or form is a gig worker. So when you have such a big proportion of people working as a gig workers, it's the time for us to change our policies to accept and include them in our ecosystem. If we do that, that's going to be the real win.
It will be a win-win situation because you will have a pool of talent who are at your disposal, my apologies, at any given point in time. And I think that's one of the trends that everyone must keep in mind while planning their strategies. So there's another poll that we would want to run very quickly, in about 10 seconds. Can we have the question, please? So the drill is the same. Please log in to www.menti.com. Can we please have that?
I'm sure this time the HR folks will actually vote. There are so many show of hands.
Yeah, please do vote because it's very important for us to know your point of view. So please log in to www.menti.com and your code is 866-81520, the same code that you used earlier. And the question is, which of the following trends do you think will shape the future workplace? The options given to you is decentralized work infrastructure, enabling proximity to employees' residence, tech-driven work environment, work automation, advanced collaborative tools, commitment to green and sustainability initiatives, smart office design, more conducive for employee productivity. So this is the result, this is the Menti result, these are the live results. So as you can see, earlier we were at about 18 or 19 responses and now just look at this. So we have a fantastic audience who is contributing to this. All right. Are we getting any more? Or should we, so we've got about 27 who says a tech-driven work environment. Excellent. Let's put up the results of the poll that, rather a survey that we had done a couple of days back. Well, bingo, the answer is the same. And before we move to the next question, ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you that I had a very interesting session in Delhi, and we were talking about generative AI. So the technology trinity is primarily your generative AI, your metaverse, and your Web3 technologies. And first time when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is not even tangent. And then when I started reading more, I realized, oh yeah, this is very important. And I was further enlightened in the boardroom discussion where the HR fraternity actually told, I was very, vocal about the fact that, hey, we use generative AI and we create job descriptions. We are actually using a lot of AI-enabled tools for our predictions to check, your flight risks, to make sure that we give the right remuneration to people. And from all the inputs and insights that we get from this loads of data, we are able to understand the need of A, the level of the individual in the company, B, the age group, C, the nature of the work, and D, probably, certain things which probably the HR fraternity, or for that matter, even the organizations never really considered. Now, if that is the way moving forward, the wealth of information that you have is really amazing. Having said that, going back to our ice-breaking discussion, if you remember what we were having, we were saying that you may have a lot of tools available. You may have a lot of insights that those tools give you. But are we able to decipher them? And that was something that I really want to listen to Mr. Sanjeeb Lahiri, your point of view on the next question. Excuse me. Technologies such as AI and automation are obviously transforming roles and job roles. Now, how can workforce management anticipate the impact of technology on the workforce and prepare the future of work? So can you throw some light on this, please, sir?
Okay. Well, a very, very relevant question. Now, whenever we talk of AI, the twin of AI, the way we call it, ChatGPT comes in place. But however, it's actually much beyond. And what you also raised it. There are two things happening. One is the adoption of technology, which once again is not a very big deal. We have seen that happen. We have passed the Y2K era, so on and so forth. We are pretty familiar. I come from manufacturing. There is a different story happening over there.
Absolutely.
But yeah, but before that, first and foremost, I think we need to understand that yes, there is a lot of data, and probably we at times get some unwanted data with inverted commas in our hand, which I think as people professionals, as senior leaders in the organization, as decision makers in the organizations, we need to be wary about what to use, how to use, and what not to use.
Correct.
The second part, now I'm coming on to that, is a question that I face very often, particularly when I'm speaking to campuses and when the students they are particularly from HR. Yeah, the first question that I generally receive is that, is HR going to exist? Are our jobs secure? I said, man, how many of you go to a bank today? So technology will be there. The advancement will be there. It will be foolish not to adopt it. And we need to learn, each one of us may be in the room, to learn to coexist with what. And the other quick point, my 2 cents, what I always say on this is, let humans not do the work that technology can do. Counting money, let the machine do. We don't need to do it, and so on and so forth. If I focus a little bit on manufacturing, where I've spent most of my time on, and I mean, I represent that sector. Now, machines talking to machines, nobody thought of, right? Now, I represent the recycling sector. A lot of very humble workforce, lot of manual work still happening. Yep. However, now when I bring in only a system and I say, okay, my machines will do the work. You guys need to now learn to look at the numbers and the colors on the panel and handle it. A huge thing. So, फिर अपना काम कौन करेगा? Incidentally, now that is the work. And here I come into this whole focus of us as people leaders, to be able to drive our workforce to a place where, once again, the old term of coexisting with technology. Work is not going to be the same, right? As work is not going to be the same, does it mean that it is end of job for a few people? Darwin's theory, you adapt, you stay. You grow, you stay. Only thing is that the openness in the mind and the people's strategies. I was deeply listening to what you guys were discussing. Very good insights on gig. Now, we as an organization have actually adopted gig for certain roles because we thought these roles are not the 65-day jobs, not even 8 hours. So why do I need to have this kind of roles in my organization? It's better happening through gig. And if the freelancer is working for another organization at their free time, I'm absolutely okay. Yes, our IT played a big role in that in terms of managing information, right, so on and so forth. So we are in a very interesting space, a cusp of a place where technology is definitely going to be there, and it's better that organizations now really learn to live with it, including each. People make organizations, so it comes down to each one of us at the last day.
So on this, Mr. Lahiri, there was one very good phrase, or that one of very respected individual from the HR fraternity only shared. It said that irrespective of the age, the tenure, the position that you hold, there are 3 steps that everybody must inculcate in their life: skill, upskill, reskill, and then repeat. So when he said this is a given for anyone, irrespective of the kind of technologies that you use, irrespective of how dynamic the environment is. If you have this inculcated in your day-to-day life where you practice these 4 things religiously, there is no way any human resource can become redundant. And the second thing what they said is evolution is inevitable. And right now with technology coming in, even our collaboration tools within the organization, there are certain companies who prefer using Slack. And I know of a company who said, despite us spending a lot of money on creating an internal collaboration platform, if you are not using it, why don't we collaborate with Slack and tell them that, you become a part of our organization? And that was a revelation for a person like me, because all the companies that I worked in, there is a very strict norm on the kind of technologies, collaboration tools that we use within our organization. So again, the rate at which things are evolving around at the periphery, organizations cannot say this is not my policy and cannot, have this closed door, approach. So that is one thing where I think we need to think when we chart out our strategies. Yes, Pratik, 1 minute. And in addition to that, the skilling bit is where I would want some more thoughts. But before we move on to you, Mr. Satej, Pratik, you wanted to say
So the skilling bit itself, when you talk about skill, upskill and reskill, I don't know when people are aware, government is having a very wonderful scheme called as National Apprentice Promotion Scheme and National Apprentice Training Scheme, whereby these schemes are very good, whereby the organization, the HR, from 2.5% to 25% in Maharashtra, they'll be able to adopt apprentices. You can call up apprentices, or you can call us a gig worker also who has never had their statutory like PF, ES and all. And these are some of the good schemes which government is promoting, whereby on an average, the HR per employee or per apprentice will be able to save 12,000 rupees. So that is very important, and government is promoting such schemes. So which is gig, which is Sanjeeb also told about things. So I think people should, or HR should also see that whether we can hire and apprentices, work them as gig workers and train them, involving the skilling, upskilling, reskilling model which you're talking about. So government is pushing it. I'm sure that organizations in HR should also adopt that. That's what I want to say.
And the fun is learning from the next generation, because they may probably learn it in 3 days. We may probably take a week. We're not that old. But to be able to adapt quickly so that we can join the race again, or for that matter, have a better competitive edge, I think that's where the upskilling, reskilling, and then kind of, repeating the entire process again comes. But, Satej, I would really want to hear from you that the continuous learning and upskilling, as much as they are very important, how can companies foster this culture of learning and development to empower their workforce?
True. Thank you for this question, and I'll just take a point ahead from where he left. So yeah, obviously there are, so I represent Wockhardt, which is basically we are into pharmaceutical manufacturing. So there are Wockhardt hospitals and there is a manufacturing head also. So I take care of the manufacturing piece, the entire Wockhardt manufacturing. And in Wockhardt, obviously it's a pharmaceutical, so it's a medicines, wherein there are lots of, right now after obviously pre-COVID, post-COVID, there are too many changes in the medical sector itself, in the pharmaceutical industry itself. And the importance of the medicals and the pharmaceuticals is something more. So health and everything we all discuss, the mental health, physical health, and everything has taken a front seat right now. And when it comes from the learning, fostering a culture of learning and development and everything. So at Wockhardt also, pharmaceuticals, we have already tied up with governments, with NASCOM also, and other various other learning and development initiatives that they take. Also for the workers, so it's not only for the corporate office, but the last man standing, my workers are also. So there are organizations who are developing a customized learning program for manufacturing of pharmaceuticals only. So there is an Indian Pharmaceutical Association which is a part associated with NASCOM and the government. And we have tied up with them wherein they have crafted a personalized 9 to 12 months program for our workers who can get certified on the manufacturing practices also. So obviously there are GMPs, there are continuous audits that we face through, and all our employees, all our workers needs to be certified on that GMP practice before they start working on the machine also. So learning is of utmost importance. None of our employees, none of the person can touch the machine until and unless he has completed, he is certified to do so for. So that's where the learning and development takes an important place for us as an organization, and for us, obviously, as a person, as an HR, it becomes very important wherein we foster a culture. So it's not that it's again a tick mark activity wherein we do it. And culture is something that we are talking since morning. Everyone said also the culture, developing a culture is not a straight or a very simple activity wise. It takes lots of effort. It takes lots of commitment right from the top. So it's a top management who needs to be involved in that. There has to be a proper budget for it. So without money, obviously nothing works. There has to be a budget for it. There are various programs that we do wherein there are learning hours. So we give people time as a learning hour. They can go during their work hour also. They can take a break, complete their sessions. There is obviously push and pull. There are a few mandatory trainings which are required, which are pushed by the organizations. And then there are soft skills trainings wherein is pull, wherein employee go as and when he has. So there are, it's again a blend of everything. It's a blended learning wherein it's at a micro learning sites are available. We have tied up with a company which gives content at a 1 hour learning. So it's only 1 hour learning. People can learn at the go. They can learn whenever at their own pace. So it's not one thing which works. When it's a culture, culture brings from everything. It has to be holistic, what we all have discussed upon. So there are various environments. So whenever we talk to any employee, obviously the first thing comes is the blending between the work schedule, personal life, and learning commitment.
Right.
It's something which we all fight with, which we all toggle between how we can find a midway between this. And that's where obviously the first commitment comes from the employee himself. But at the same time, we as an organization, we as an HR leaders are equally responsible as an IC to create that environment for them, to create that place wherein they can decide their priorities, at the same time decide to the commitment of the learning also for them.
That's absolutely profound. And before I move to the next question, I would like to also share one experience I had in one of the sessions in Delhi that we had, where the standard norm that everyone uses is the decisions or the culture has to be driven from top down. And there was one individual who manages a global role clearly saying that why should it be top down? It has to be down top as a matter of fact. Everyone in the different layers must be adept enough. So primarily we were discussing merging two things. One is the decision being top down, and the second is some of them said, it's okay to fail. It's just okay to fail. But this individual with a global role said, first and foremost, it should be down top. And second thing that is very important is, if you go with the attitude that it's okay to fail, that itself will basically move you towards failure. So you need to make sure every person is well educated, trained, understands the job, is able to comprehend the information, is able to convert them to insightful results, give it to the decision makers, and if the decision makers have some doubts about it, they should be able to come back and these people should be able to create. So ultimately it was such an insightful thing because first time we saw an individual with a global role actually saying this. So more or less what we really understand is that to create a good organization in this dynamic environment, you can't have a certain mindset or certain things that have been given to us by virtue of our earlier leaders because the situation has changed. So I'm going to merge and give a very big question where I'll start with you, Mr. Rao. That if you have to have a purpose-driven work environment and you have to align it with an organization, okay? What are the three things that will come in your mind? And since we don't have much time, but there were certain topics that were yet to be touched. That is, having an inclusive environment where you have, take into consideration diversity, equity, inclusion. So if you could just add a couple of points on this, as well as your employee well-being and mental health. And last but not the least is, the data and analytics in the workforce. So even if you don't talk about data and analytics because it's covered, but these two aspects for creating a dynamic environment, what would be the three things that you would specifically emphasize? Again, I would repeat the question because anyone can take a stab at this. To include diversity, equity, and inclusion, when you plan your strategy, and also consider employee well-being and mental health. Mr. Rao?
Yeah. See, while organizations exist for the purpose for which they have come into existence, individuals are making choices of which organization to be part of on the basis of what will give them fulfillment, what will give them some of the benefits which we talked about, number two, and is the workplace, is the culture of the workplace or the mission of the workplace or the values that are depicted and practiced by the managers and the leaders or helping them in terms of fulfilling and reaching their destination. I think these are very, very important dimensions as we see it. And these dimensions take different kind of triads and dyads and so on and so forth, wherein people need to look at it from different points. Whether it is a mental health being, diverse workplace, the fulfilling work, or in terms of a leadership behavior, which is really living out and delivering on the promises becomes very, very important as we deliver the kind of workplace we need to have.
Thank you, Mr. Rao. Mr. Sengupta, you had a good viewpoint when we were discussing in the...
Right. So it's a bit like this, right? I mean, for a dynamic workplace, end of the day, what we're looking at is, all the technology and all those kinds of good things is a given. Data is available to us, right? But I think like Mr. Lahiri was also saying, it's about, having that human in the loop kind of a system where, technology gets used to be able to inform certain decisions, but technology is not on the driver's seat fundamentally, right? So it becomes very important, if we have to think about a dynamic kind of a workplace, it becomes very important to balance out some of these kinds of things, right? And also, the other aspect is the soft skills part of the thing that we, have talked about many, many times, right? Now, soft skills is something which is perhaps more important than ever, right? And it's simply because things are uncertain, dynamic, and the whole thing about adaptability and the ability to learn is something which is a culture thing, but also is something which is, is a soft skill that people need to develop and work upon, right? And not take for granted, right? The old days of having a deep expertise in a given field is perhaps important, but not the only thing that matters.
Mr. Lahiri, your point of view?
See, I believe in adaptation. Like skills, and actually long ago, one of my ex-bosses used to actually use this term very, very frequently, that all of you have come with your expiry dates. Unless you renew yourselves, you guys are going to be extinct.
True.
Same thing I see is probably relevant for organizations' purposes and also culture. Reliving it, and I quite like the point that culture is a living thing. It is not always somebody said and that is percolated down, right? So basically building upon that, and I will touch a little bit on the DEI perspective. A lot of, for me, the D, E, and I are what we put it in the system. What we get out is the B, the belongingness part of it. Now, my very quick take on that is that I really don't, for me, when I'm looking at talent, the talent fit for a job comes with no color, no gender, no anything. If it is the talent. Now, how are we making decisions for the talent, whether the talent is going to come and work for us because the talent may be staying somewhere, the talent may be belonging to certain other gender, so on and so forth, is something we need to. So basically, we're talking about an inclusive workplace. Just let us open up our minds.
Correct.
The first place. From all perspectives. This is how we worked. Yes, this is what we worked maybe 50 years ago. I'm talking about my organization. We are in our golden jubilee year. But this is how we worked all these years. Are we going to work like this for the next 50 years? I'm sure my workforces come back and say no. True. To be open to those thoughts and make the change.
Thank you, Mr. Lahiri. And sorry, Pratik, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to add here.
Yeah, sure.
You're saying all that, 3 points which you asked. So, most important thing what HR and organization needs to see is, one is hyper personalization. So that's very important, especially in the dynamic world, especially in hybrid work culture or remote work culture, where one paintbrush cannot be used for all. You have workplace in office setup, in-house workplace. You have same kind of cubicles and everything, but remote working is totally different. So hyper personalization is very, very important. Ensuring diversity and inclusion, ensuring and having empathy towards the understanding that people need that flexi hours, employees need that understanding of, because they come from different homes. Some may have 1 bedroom, some may have 2 bedrooms, some may not have things at all, and being mindful of that. That's empathy is very, very important. Lastly, I would like to just put one point is that organizations need to ensure that they have a result-oriented approach, not the 9-to-5 approach, which, you're telling about that 9-to-5. Bharat was talking about 9-to-5, we have traditionally wired. Result-oriented approach, not that how much time a person is working or employee is working, what he has done in that much time, that is very important. So I think these are the 2-3 pointers which I wanted to add here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pratik. And in the interest of time, I would like to summarize our discussion. You have the mic in your hand, Bharat. Do you want to just...
Shall I just take 30 seconds?
Yes.
So, just an interesting fact, right? Japan has already seen the demographic dividend in last couple of decades. This decades that we're going to see next 2-3 decades that are going to come will be the decades for India, where India will see the demographic dividend of the most workable population being there in the country. So the entire demography that operates for you, works for you, is going to be very different from what you have been seeing so far. So whatever we speak, whether it's culture, ways of working, technology, whatever, right, policies, it's time to rethink about whether it is really relevant in today's time. So
Thanks. Thank you so much, Bharat. And I mean, I've learned a lot. Of course, I could not take a lot of points, but since we've already had an ice-breaking session and we did discuss this earlier as well, so I'll just summarize our discussion. So the topic was around strategies for creating, a good business environment, and especially considering that everything is dynamic out here. So in my mind, it's important to first understand the elements of a smart business, which is around people and productivity. And if we have to chart out a strategy, we have to chart out a strategy for creating an epic business. And this is something I kind of tried to coin, because when I was reading, I just realized that having an efficient, productive, informed, and cost-effective business basically is creating an epic business. And for that purpose, on the basis of all the inputs that you've given, if we have to look at the elements that we need to keep in mind while charting out the strategy, we need to understand that hybrid, remote working, and is going to become the way forward. And flexible environment is something that employees these days would want. So we will have to bear that in, or keep that in mind while charting out our strategies. We will need to understand that virtual team building has to become a priority for most of the leaders. And that's primarily because, as I said, we are going global now. We have our global representatives as well as our local representatives who prefer working from different locations. So how to train your leaders to make sure that they are adept in virtual team building. We have to try and see that if flexible work schedule is something that is the need of the hour, how do we make sure that we put the checks and balances in place so that the productivity is not hampered? It becomes cost effective for us at times, but at the same time, the return on ignorance is not something where we will have to kind of pay for. The new term around the block is employee experience, which is EX. So we had customer experience, and I have always maintained a stance that you have your internal customers, that's your employees, and you have your external customers, that those are your customers. So it's important to maintain that balance, in the absence of which things can go wrong for us. Employee skills and training is extremely imperative in today's times, and the modes have to be intelligently thought through. And it's very important for us to be quite flexible in providing this so that the work doesn't get hampered, and at the same time, it doesn't infiltrate into their personal space as well. McKinsey had published a report saying that investments in technology, especially driven by the need for employees, or more than your customers, your employees, has increased. And who are those people who are driving these? Who are the key decision makers? You. I mean, all these case studies are put by our HR leaders, saying that we will need to have a lot of investment in technology to make sure that collaboration, productivity, insights from analytics has to be given on a timely basis to the key decision makers within the organization. And of course, employees have also become very important, or influencers in these key decisions for the companies. And therefore, the investments have seen a certain rise. More importantly, the roles have been redefined. And that is where the HR leaders themselves must say that I am not an individual who has to just look at the employees. I am a co-pilot to my CEO as well, because at the end of the day, the organization's vision, values, culture is not the only prerogative of HR. It's also giving the kind of workforce who can drive the business further. It's also about creating that environment so that you are able to retain the good talent, and also kind of give them the kind of insights, the leaders, the senior management, the insights on how you can attract better talent. So this is where I think the role of HR has evolved significantly, or rather it's redefined completely in today's times. And last but not the least is the employee well-being. And at the end of the day, employee well-being is just one word, but it has got probably 1,000 dimensions to it. So if these kind of things are taken into consideration while you create your strategy, you will create an epic business. And I think in summary, sir, I hope I have covered most of the points that we had talked about. And with that, I would like to thank all our panelists for taking time out from your schedule, contributing to this fantastic discussion, and thank you so much for listening to us attentively. Thank you.
A huge, huge round of applause for such an insightful discussion from all our panelists. And now I would request Ms. Acharya to present the mementos to all our distinguished panelists. Can we have the claps going, please?